Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in to Weather and Earth 25. This video is covering August and September 2021's natural disaster predictions. We're looking at which disasters could happen around the world, and more importantly, when these disasters could happen around the world. For those of you who are new to my channel, I usually try to focus on which dates on the calendar are more likely to bring certain natural disasters, and to a degree, try to also guess in the more educated way possible which kind of disasters could happen on certain dates on the calendar and where they could occur. So this is mostly found through the use of astrology and numerology. And the astrology that I'm more into is called Chinese astrology. This is a very detailed form of astrology that really can help pinpoint which dates on the calendar have certain risks for something to happen. Numerology does the same thing, and Western astrology adds a little touch to that as well. You combine the three, you can find out what dates on the calendar are riskier compared to others. And once I put that down on a sheet of paper or a graph, or as you're going to see in this video, something more visual like an actual calendar, I can mark up a calendar and I can see how the energy from one day shifts to the next. And then eventually you can see how an energy shifts from 1 week to the next, and then how it shifts from 1 month to the next, to give you an overall idea of how these dates come and go and what events could occur. So compared to my previous videos that I've done, I'm actually trying out a new change in how I show these risk dates to hopefully get you guys into seeing how these dates can change from one to the next, and how they can how they can relate to what kind of disaster or event could occur, or how risky it is to occur. So I figured before I go ahead and go into details with August and September, I'm going to start making a recap of this July that just passed. It's actually still late July as I'm recording this. It's currently July the 28th. We're going to take a look at the whole month of July, in particular the late part of July, so you guys can see what kind of risk days existed and what kind of events occurred. And yep, here begins. Alright guys, just like I said in the intro, I was going to use July as an example of how I'm going to interpret August and September and show you this new change in the video. For those of you who have seen my video before, this isn't really any different yet. This is the astronumerology chart for July 2021, basically showing you the different indicators of Chinese astrology, numerology, and Western zodiac, and how they combine to yield that yellow-orange line, which is the important one to see on this chart. And also you can see on the left side I have a scale from basically 1 all the way to 11, in which from level 6 and above we start considering risk dates. So every time that yellow-orange line climbs above level 6, we have a risk date. And you can tell on this chart that July starts off fairly calm and then gets fairly active during the second half. So far, nothing new. But now, I'm about to show you how this looks on an actual calendar. So we're going to take these lines and plot them on the calendar. And here it is. This is the calendar for July 2021, converted now, to show you how these dates actually look more individually on the calendar. And yes indeed, there are colors on this calendar. I have a legend at the bottom that shows you what each color means, so you can follow along with me here. I'll try to be brief with this so we can move on to the prediction. So basically the first half of July, from the 1st all the way to the 14th, only featured 3 risk dates, and all of them were on the low side of things. As you can see, light green and dark green corresponds to 6 and 6.5 as the risk level, which is basically low to medium. And that's what we had, 1st, 7th, and 13th of July. As far as I know, not much happened during those days, so July started on a quiet note. But then things began to change as we hit the mid part of the month. We got a light blue date on the 15th, an orange on the 16th, and another light blue on the 17th. Light blue is a category that I call the grace period. It corresponds to dates that are also below level 6, but they're right next door to risk dates that are actually considered strong. And what I mean by strong is orange or stronger. Usually this happens because the powerful date can share some of its energy to the dates that are right around it, especially when there's a lone risk date involved here. July 16th was the only date in that part of the month that went above level 6. Therefore, it had a lot of sudden energy, and it could have transferred to the 15th or to the 17th, especially due to world time zones. Because, as you know, the world it's a large, it's a big world, and we're living 2 dates at the same time. It could be the 16th over here, it could be the 17th on the other side of the world. So therefore, I felt the need to include the light blue dates for that. But more often than not, the events will happen on the powerhouse date, and in this case, the 16th is that one. After that, it drops again a bit, and then you see light green on the 19th, light green on the 21st, dark orange on the 22nd. 22nd was actually a bit riskier than the 16th, according to this stuff. And then we have that date that sticks out like a sore thumb, July the 25th, also surrounded by 2 light blue dates. Basically the same situation that July 16th had, but even higher. And to round off the month, some green on the 28th and 29th. So those of you who are wondering, well, how did this translate to what happened in July? This is what happened. Looking back on July, devastating floods hit Europe, in particular Germany and Belgium, from July 15th into the 16th. So it actually happened on the light blue date and continued during the powerful 7.5 risk level date of July 16th. Then the 19th came around and there was still some flooding going on, but they're in the process of recovery. And then on the 21st and 22nd, more rounds of rain kept happening in the area, bringing more flooding. There was also a tornado that caused some damage in China on the 21st. 22nd, I have to look and see if anything happened, but I think it was just mainly a continuation of that severe weather event in China. But then the 25th came, and boy did the 25th prove eventful. Fortunately, not many lives were lost, but you gotta take a look and see what that date brought. Just looking at this calendar, I could have told you July 25th is the most powerful date in July this year, and it's a single risk date. That means there was no other date around that date that went above level 6. Just as a precaution, I would have said watch out on the 24th and the 26th. But the 25th is the main risk date. As a general rule, the second half of the 24th, so in other words 12 hours before the 25th, and then 12 hours after the 25th, so meaning the morning of the 26th, would have been the time frame for risk. But in this case, the 25th was the one that brought it. And this is what it brought. Take a look and see what events happened around the world on July 25th this year. It might shock you. Well, that was something. So we saw some severe floods yet again in Belgium that struck on that date. And the most shocking event of the date was that crazy rock slide in India. Devastating event, actually. Could have been worse, but it was still very catastrophic. 9 people were killed when a tourist bus got struck by a massive boulder during that horrible event. The power of that event was incredible. As you can see in the video, even the bridge got destroyed in the process. That right there, my friends, is what I call a sudden natural disaster. And now that you look at this calendar and you see that the 25th was basically the only big risk date in that group, there really was no group of risk dates, because the 24th and the 26th are in light blue, which means that they were below level 6. This means that the 25th was the only date around those days that went above level 6, and it went really way up, all the way to 9. It was a level 9 day. So if I was making a prediction and I see this, I'm going to tell you, July 25th is basically by itself. So there is a chance, a good chance, that a major or sudden natural disaster could strike on July 25th or right around that date. And to put up a time frame of risk, I would have said late on the 24th through the morning of the 26th, we should look out for a potential sudden natural disaster. When it comes to sudden natural disasters, there are several scenarios that fit the bill, but there's a lot of them that are not weather related. When it comes to a sudden natural disaster, we could be talking about an earthquake, we could be talking about a landslide, we could be also talking about a mudslide or a flash flood. Now if we start talking about weather, sudden weather events would include a tornado or, well, then again, a flash flood. In this case, on July 25th, it was geological. It was a rock slide. Basically, the mountain just gave way and rocks started tumbling down that thing. Sudden natural disaster. An alternative could have been the monstrous earthquake, but instead it was this landslide that you saw. And the flash flood in Belgium as well. That was actually a flash flood that happened on the 25th, which is a continuation of the kind of disaster that's been striking Europe since July 15th. That's basically how you can interpret these dates. When you see a group of dates that are colored side by side, like July 21st and 22nd, for example, we could say, oh, it's a 2-day risk period. So the event that happens might not be exactly that sudden, but it might be more of something that takes 2 days to happen, such as a flooding event or a severe weather event. And of course, there was some severe weather around those days. There's a lot of information here, and it's too long to get into this video, so I figured I would use July 25th as the main example for you guys to see how it turned out, considering it was the strongest date in July. So now that you've seen how I more or less interpret July, you'll be able to understand how I take a look at the coming August and September. So now, guys, finally, without much further ado, let's proceed and take a look at August and September coming up. Alright, so now here begins the actual future cast of these predictions. So just like we did with July, now let's have a look at August 2021. And this is actually the indicator chart for August 2021. I'm going to show you this briefly so then you can see how it gets translated onto the actual calendar. You can see there's a lot of chaos in August. There's a lot more dates that go above level 6 compared to July. In fact, there's a very big amount of them. And, well, overall, I can just tell you right off the bat, August 2021 is looking very busy. So, now, let's translate all this chaos you see before you into the calendar. So here it is. This is a calendar for August 2021. Bam! Take a look. Yep, that's a lot of color. Definitely a different looking month than July. Different energy here too. I can tell you that right away. Let's get to it. Let's interpret this stuff. This is how it's looking. August 1st, it's a yellow date. So basically it corresponds to level 7, which is medium. August 2nd has no color, and then August 3rd is light green. This right here means that August 1st is actually a lone risk date. In other words, a single risk date in which a sudden event could happen. It's not powerful enough to affect the day right after it or the date before, which was July 31st. So it's just there by itself. If I had to say anything, I would say be careful with a potential moderate earthquake or landslide or mudslide on August the 1st. A flash flood is also possible because it's probably one of the fastest occurring weather events that you can have that can cause disaster. So that's basically how August 1st looks. August 2nd, it's a quick break. And then August 3rd, it's another single risk date. So another sudden event is possible on that date, like an earthquake or landslide. But since it's only a level 6, it's a fairly low risk date. So we can just go ahead and just categorize that as a slight risk date for something sudden to happen. But then you'll see what happens next. Now we have August 6th. Take a look at that. It's very similar to July 16th from the previous calendar example. It's a stronger risk date now. It's a 7.5 on the scale, which is where we start thinking about including a day before and a day after for grace period. 7.5 and above is where I would start considering a date as a powerful risk date. 7.5 corresponds to medium to high risk now. So therefore, August 6th is a significant risk date. And since it's basically the only day around those days that goes above level 6 and is strong, we were talking about a potential sudden natural disaster yet again. Potential earthquake or mudslide, landslide, or flash flood. But here, since the 6th of August is stronger, I would caution from late on the 5th through the morning of the 7th, with August 6th being the likeliest date. We go down. 8th and 9th of August look fairly nice. So that's a nice break at least. It's good to have some good days. So, we don't have to be worrying about too many disasters then. But then look what happens on August 10th. Oof. We go from a day with no risk to basically a red date, which in this case is a level 9. Now, it doesn't end there. This red date continues into the 11th, which is at a level 8.5 or an 8, and orange. And then it goes down to yellow on the 12th. Then you see some light blue. Then you see some green, another orange, and then more green, then blue, green, yellow, and green, and then yellow and orange again. Wow, what is going on here? What's up with all these dates? Well, here we have to take a look at the bigger picture. In reality, what we're seeing here is basically non-stop color from August 10th all the way to August 27th. That is a long time, my friends. That's about 17 or 18 days. We can take a look at this and just say this is one long risk period. And what a long risk period usually translates to is prolonged weather disaster. It's the most likely scenario here. So I'm not going to include sudden events like earthquakes or landslides anymore like I did for the other dates. But now here, the most likely event is going to be a weather event or weather events that last several days. This could actually translate to more flooding, but now flooding that lasts for a long time, such as when like rivers overflow their banks, or when there's a series of storms just happening over the same area. Same thing when it comes to the tropics. This could actually be a very busy part for the tropics, where we could have hurricanes or typhoons. Most likely typhoons in the Western Pacific, which could also lead to massive flooding. So there's definitely a lot of action here, and this is really the riskiest part of August. How to categorize the risk, though, when there's so many dates, you might be wondering. When you consider a bunch of dates as one single risk period, the risk period as a whole will get the risk level of its strongest date. And out of all those dates, from August 10th all the way to the 27th, the strongest risk date there is actually August the 10th. So we will say that the whole risk period has a chance of natural disaster that corresponds to level 9, which is about 40% chance, if you're wondering what number that means. So about a 40% chance for natural disaster, about a 30% that it will be severe. So this is a really big part of the month, and I'm leaning towards weather disaster. A lot of events, probably not just one event, but many weather events around the world during August 10th all the way to the 27th. As far as those blue dates you see there are concerned, which is August 13th and August 20th, that's the other situation in which I use grace period dates. Because in reality, it's just a short dip below level 6 that just bridges the gap between two powerful risk dates. Risk date periods, rather. Because in reality, you got 10th through the 12th which is strong risk period, because out of the 3 dates, the 10th and the 11th are actually a very strong level. And then we got the 14th and 15th, where the 15th is also a strong level. So with the 13th being between those 2 dates, it's really just sandwiched in between. It's not really enough time for one risk period to end and another strong risk period to begin. So most likely it'll just continue through it. Same thing happens on the 20th, because after that date we reach some strong dates again, which is the 27th. That's why those grace periods are there. So rather than looking at this as 3 separate risk periods, we're grouping them all into one. And that's how it's looking. And after August 27th, the risk goes away again. So at least the very late part of the month might actually calm down a bit. Now, aside from the weather risks that this long risk period presents, there is some sudden nature to 2 of those dates on this chart, actually. August 10th and August 27th. You might notice the 10th and the 27th are very strong. It's level 8 and 9, basically. And they're right next to dates that were below level 6. You see how it's calm on the 9th, and then suddenly, boom, it goes all the way up to red on the 10th. And then on the 27th, how it's orange, and then bam, it drops to nothing on the 28th. That could indicate there's a strong, rapid change in energy from calm to busy. So that could also mean that if we're going to see any sudden events, which tend to happen on dates where there's a sudden change, the 2 dates I'd be watching out for possible earthquakes during this time frame would be August 10th and August 27th. But since this is a really long risk period, I would still favor weather events over sudden natural disasters like earthquakes or landslides, which would be like a less likely scenario in this situation. So yes, folks, this is how we use the calendar to visually see how things change from one day to the next. And you can see that August is very different than July. There's a lot more grouped risk dates in August than July, so we're likely to see more long time rolling weather events, and particularly during the middle and later part of the month. So as you might be wondering, how's September looking? Let's take a look. Now that you saw August, it's time to move on to September. So get ready, here it comes. Here it is, September 2021. Once again, let's take a brief look at the indicator chart for September 2021. You can see that it looks more or less kind of like August, where there's a lot of action going on, where the yellow-orange line climbs above level 6. I don't know if you might be able to see, but there is just a little bit less amount of dates where this happens. But now get ready to see how this translates onto the calendar, because now we're about to see this in better shape, in a better focused view, where you're actually going to see there is significant differences between August and September, which may not be too apparent on the chart, but it will definitely be on the calendar. So get ready, guys, because here it is, September 2021. Bam! This is the calendar for that month coming up. And take a look at this. Take a look at the colors. So you see this? Notice how there's just a little bit less color than August. But that doesn't tell the whole story. There's a lot more breaks in between the risk dates. So in fact, September has more individual risk dates than August does. And this has implications to what the month can actually bring. And let's get started. September 1st and 2nd appear as good. No color, most likely will not have natural disasters. That's good. So at least it continues the quiet trend that might occur at the very end of August. But then you notice that September 3rd and 4th, we start having some green. And then we have orange on September 5th and then light green on the 6th. Notice how it's the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th that are back-to-back colored dates. So here, we don't have any lone or single risk dates. We have a 4-day risk period. When I see a 4-day risk period in which the strongest date is at level 8 at orange, which is September 5th. When I see a 4-day risk period in the month of September, you gotta start thinking hurricane or typhoon, because the most likely event will be something that takes about 4 days to happen. And when there's these kind of tropical storms, they do tend to last several days as they churn their way across the ocean and crash into different land areas. So I would say that's a big weather week right there. We could probably have a tropical storm, cyclone, or hurricane from the 3rd to the 6th of September. There's also the potential for other weather disasters that take a couple days to happen. Probably some longer term flooding, for example. That kind of thing. Then we quiet down on the 7th and the 8th. And then September 9th comes around. And here it's a peculiar situation. This is not like what you see on September 3rd to the 6th. This is different. September 9th is actually one lone risk date. It's by itself, which means the 8th and the 10th did not go above level 6. Only the 9th of September did, and it's a 6.5. The good news is it's a 6.5, so it's basically a low medium risk date. But the bad thing is that it's a sudden date, so we can have a sudden natural disaster, although a low probability of that on September 9th. Most likely an earthquake or a landslide or a sudden flash flood event could happen on the 9th. The 10th is a light blue date, the 11th is orange, and the 12th is another light blue date. As you can see, this is a situation like what we've seen before. Look back to July the 25th, for example. We had a powerful risk date surrounded by 2 light blue dates. It's the same situation here. It's really September 11th we got to worry about, but I would caution late on the 10th through early on the 12th. We could see something. Most likely a sudden natural disaster, like a major earthquake or a landslide. But considering it is September, it is not out of the question that we could see a fast-moving hurricane that strikes land on September 11th. Probably has something to do with the 9th as well. But more likely than not, this is a screaming earthquake right here. And September 11th is powerful. So now we move on. September 13th quiets down a bit. But it's short-lived. But not a light blue date. Since the 12th is already light blue, the 13th can't have that neither. So the 13th is quiet. But then we have the 14th, 15th, 16th. We got 3 dates in color. And the 14th is a 7.5. So that risk period there, that 3-day risk period, takes on the risk level of September 14th, which is medium high. Again, 3 risk days back-to-back in September. Most likely event is a tropical cyclone, either a hurricane or a typhoon, or a potential flood event, resulting from perhaps the same stuff. Even though the 14th is a quick jump from the 13th onto the 14th, there is a bit of a sudden change there. So maybe a possible earthquake on September 14th, but more than likely it'll be a weather event. Now we keep going to 17th September, looking good. The 18th, the same thing. Some nicer days there at least. Then we got the 19th and 20th, which are barely risk dates. They're just low-end level 6 dates. And then we're back to having some calm on the 21st and 22nd. So I would say the 17th through the 22nd of September is a fairly nice week, with only low risk for potential short-duration weather event on the 19th and 20th. Maybe a tropical storm or some flooding. But then after the 22nd of September, bam, we got a red date, the 23rd. So it really jumped here. And it continued into the 25th, although the 24th and 25th are much lower in risk. They're still part of that group. So in reality, we have a 3-day risk period yet again, in which the 23rd is the peak date. Here we could see another weather event that happens, probably another tropical cyclone. But since there's such a big change from the 22nd into the 23rd, I would caution against a potential earthquake or other sudden natural disaster to happen on the 23rd, in addition to a potential weather event that lasts into the 25th. September 26th offers just a little bit of a break. Then the 27th is actually a lone risk date. It's basically the same thing that happens on September 9th. The 27th is a mirror image of that date. A level 6.5 risk date that could have a moderate earthquake or a landslide event. And then the 28th is in light blue because the 29th is actually very similar to September 11th. Another powerful single risk date in which we got a caution late on the 28th through early on the 30th. 29th being the peak risk date. And for those of you curious of why the 29th and the 11th are so similar to each other, it actually has to do with numerology. The numerology of the 11th of September and the 29th of September is actually really powerful. There's a lot to get into, but I'll just give you a quick snippet. It's a phenomenon that touched upon in a video of mine some years ago. It's called the 1125 phenomenon. It's basically when the date has the number 11 and the number 25 at the same time in its numerology chart, and it appears in a very obvious and striking manner, the chances for a major disaster to happen really go up. So this is basically as high as it gets on the numerology chart. We got the 11 on September 11th. You add 9 plus 11 plus the year, which is 2021. In numerology, you got to keep the 11 whole when you're doing the math, because it's what they call a master number. So it's really 9 plus 11 plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 1. That equals 25. In September 29th's case, the 29 does have the 11 hiding there. It's a 2 plus 9, so it's an 11. But also, the September 29, which is 9 plus 2 plus 9. 9 plus 29 is 38. 3 plus 8, 11. So you can find 11 in that way as well. And to top it off, if you do digit by digit, 9 plus 2 plus 9 gives you 20, plus 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 1, which is a year, you get 25. So there you go, 1125. That's why the 11th and the 29th of September have so much risk in the numerology part of things. And then the Chinese astrology of both of those days was actually not that favorable either. So they are among the strongest risk dates of the month. September 5th, 14th, and 23rd also have really interesting numerology from a whole other perspective. And that's why they're also in those colors. Basically, it has to do with the repeating of the number 5. For those of you wondering, 2021, when you add the digits, it gives you 5. It's a 5 year. Well, September 5th, the day is 5. So it's just like the year. It's a 5 year and a 5 day. And then when you add 9 to the 5, you get 14. And then you add 1 plus 4, it gives you 5 yet again. So the number 5 happens 3 times on the 5th of September, the 14th, and the 23rd. And therefore, that is also another really powerful setup in numerology. That's right up there with the 1125 phenomenon. So those 3 days also are really dangerous for numerology. And also the Chinese astrology for those days was not very favorable. In some future video, I'm going to try to spread out these details a little better, how we calculate the risk for each individual date using the numerology and astrology. But for this video, it'd probably be too long to do. The most I can do is show you this calendar, and hope you guys actually like how this looks, so you guys can see how the calendar can be probably even more useful than just showing you the lines on the indicator chart. So yeah, my friends, that's how September 2021's calendar looks. So now that you've seen this along with August, now you guys have a better idea and understanding of how I look at these calendars and start thinking in my head, okay, how could these things play out? Are these single risk days? Are these grouped risk days? What are the most common events that happen during these months? And that's how I start piecing together the risk days and what can happen during those days. And for those of you that don't really know much about this stuff, I mean, August and September is basically entering the heart of hurricane season, the heart of typhoon season as well. So more often than not, we're going to see tropical storms and hurricanes and typhoons making up a lot of the events happening during these months. And the secondary effects, definitely floods. Floods can happen from severe storms or the tropical storms themselves that can bring this upon when they crash into land. But then you got to watch out for those single risk days, which are always good ones for earthquakes, as well as the very beginning and very ending of longer risk day periods, like as I showed with August 10th and August 27th, for example, where they could also have those events, aside from the potential long rolling weather events that's going to happen all in between. So now you guys have this in mind. I'm going to go ahead and continue with this. I'm just going to show you some written predictions that I made for August and September. And of course, like I've done in previous videos, I will show you those world maps where I try to circle the areas of the world that I think are more at risk to have certain events on those certain dates of the month, just to make this video more complete, and yeah. So, alright guys, let's go on and keep going with this prediction video. Now, you'll see what I was talking about. Let's move on from these calendar dates, and now let's put these predictions down on the readable format for you guys to see the product of what I've shown you so far. So here we go. Alright, my friends, so that's it for August and September 2021. All that you've seen thus far was the product of all those indicator charts and calendars with all those colors and my interpretations. That's how I came up with the predictions, and now you saw the predictions that I made for August and September, and the scenarios that can happen, the dates on when they can happen, and the world areas where these disasters could possibly happen over the coming 8 weeks. Let's hope for the best, and that most of these things, or all of these things, don't actually happen, and that the world gets lucky. But if things do happen, I hope this video serves as a good warning in case you are in one of those dangerous areas and those risk dates come around and something decides to happen, so you guys can be prepared. That's my main objective with these prediction videos, is to help whoever's seeing this be prepared. Just have a plan in the back of your mind, or let loved ones know that are in risk areas to be a little bit more careful in certain parts of the months coming up. So I just hope you guys do well. Hope you guys stay safe out there wherever you are, and I just wish you guys the best of luck in the coming months. Thank you so much for having watched this prediction video. I hope the change I made in this video is well liked. Please let me know if you think it's great, and if you don't think it's great, that's fine too. Just let me know. This is basically an experimental prediction video that I've come up with, so we'll see. Perhaps I'll continue doing this from here on. Thanks again, guys. Take care, and hopefully, if all goes well, I should make another video for October and November 2021, ready to view a couple months from now. Take care, y'all. Bye.